Hello, gay people. Welcome to episode 4 of Kings on the Aux, the podcast where drag kings talk music and gender performance. I'm your host, Caius Crow, also known as Ben. I am so excited for the future of this podcast because, at the time of this recording, I have sessions completed or on the books for our full release calendar now through August. I'm working ahead to give myself a lighter schedule in the summer. And on top of that, I have a list of about a dozen kings who have told me they want to be on the podcast, plus a longer list of kings my listeners have told me they want to hear on the podcast. So, all of that to say, if you are a drag king listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I know exactly what number I want to bring to this show, hit me up. It might take me a few months, but trust me, I want to talk to you. The more kings I can have on and the more performance styles and city scenes we can represent, the better the show will be. So, thank you all for your enthusiasm so far. My next guest is one of Cleveland's leading names in alt and horror drag, Marquis Gaylord. He is known as the host of alternative showcases like Manor of the Macabre and the Odditorium. More on the Odditorium later. Marquis has always set himself apart with an impressive, often intimidating stage presence, and really incredible artistry with his prop work and costuming. He recently celebrated his 3-year anniversary in drag, so he'd been doing it for about a year before I started. Some of his earlier numbers were super formative for me as some of the first alternative king drag I got to see. Marquis, if you're listening, I still think about that Talking Heads American Psycho mix where you murdered Himbo. That was so good. So, when we arranged this interview, there was a lot of great material to choose from, and I'm very excited to introduce another, much more recent horror number that Marquis brought for us on this episode. The number you're about to hear us discuss is the first single song, straight through, no mix, that we have featured on the show. We're talking about his interpretation of the Harley Poe song called Transvestites Can Be Cannibals Too. I'll let that title sit for a second because it's awesome, one of my favorite songs. What Marquis does with this number is the kind of nuanced critique of the way trans people and trans bodies are framed by society that we just don't see that much, even in drag spaces. It's also really personal, as he shares during our conversation. I had to do a couple takes of this introduction, which I don't usually, because I would remember some of what he said on here and get choked up for a second. At the same time, this was also a really fun episode to record. Transsexuals just get it. I hope you all enjoy our talk. Let's get started. So Harley Poe is a folk punk band with lots of horror subject matter, and we see plenty of that in this song. So for Marquis Gaylord, as an artist and a persona, how does horror inspire your drag?
Word. So, yeah, it's really funny actually, because in the beginning, that is definitely not what the persona was going to be for me. Very early concept Marquis Gaylord, I was very inspired by the Rococo era and that aesthetic. Like my initial idea of who Marquis Gaylord was this like frilly, foppish, dandy, girly boy who was, very, very fruity, delightfully fruity, and, just very coy and playful and just coquettish, but not in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that was like kind of the idea that I had for him, kind of like that no, a nobleman, but just super fruity. But also for me, the initial inspiration and like connection to the Rococo genre was, I took AP art history when I was in high school and, loved studying the classics, was very drawn to, art in the art world. But it was always so interesting to see all of these works we were taught about that were, taught to us as the greatest works of art, possibly imaginable. There were no black people. You know what I mean?
Right.
So here you are in this class being taught like this piece of art and all this art, this is the greatest art you'll ever see, and you see no human beings who look anything like yourself,
Mm.
because then of course you go into all of the, socio-political things about the art of that era that's representative of that in in a mainstream way. Because of course we know historically there are beautiful portraits of, wealthy African royalty that does exist. Occasionally on
Hmm.
like Facebook, you'll like see a pop-up of it and you'll be like, oh wow, this was a thing. But when you're being taught in school, that's not it. So I saw those aesthetics and I was really drawn to them and I said to myself, like, how cunt, and I did not use the word cunt because that me using that word just like quadrupillioned after I started doing drag. I never
Yes,
used that word.
obviously.
But this is me talking about in my past life. I said, how would it be for
Hmm.
me, this black trans person, to take these aesthetics and just pervert them for my own pleasure and just bastardize them? Like, what would it be like for these people to see me all these years like later dressing like them and putting on their airs and being their aesthetic and just claiming it and making it my own? So
Hmm.
that was the initial inspiration behind my drag persona. Now, as my persona developed and matured as a good drag persona is ought to do,
Hmm.
I discovered an interest in myself of a more sensual, that a persona that was more kind of rooted in sex. And I think that also came around the time I started really getting like into drag. I was early in my transition as a trans person, so I
Hmm.
feel like my transition and getting more comfortable with my body as I got more comfortable with my drag. And, that is what then led me to a more sensual persona. And then, mind you, I'm going on. You asked me about horror. It all ties back to horror. Trust and
No,
believe
I
me.
trust you. I
It
trust
ties
you.
back to horror. And so then, as like, where does the horror element come from? Well, that's because I'm autistic.
Yes.
Horror has always been my special interest. I've always been drawn to it. I feel like horror very early into my trance experience, I felt that connection because, when you reach a point in your life when you look at your body and it's not a body that you recognize or a body that you want to be in, and the changes are happening to you that you can't stop, and you kind of start to develop, this was like me during puberty, developing all of this dysphoria and anxiety around my body. And I always struggled with a very severe menstrual cycle that
Mm.
would leave me incapacitated for a week, vomiting and bedbound and, just in a really, rough way, body wise. And that was like a very sort of like body horror experience for me. So all those body things tying in with like a love of horror that I had, turning it into a connection with my trans experience. I always describe my transsexual experience is one of horror, but I also feel like there's beauty in that horror. And so, thus, as it's all the convergences converging
Hmm.
at once.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's the Venn diagram of experiences
Yeah.
of my trans experience, of my artistic experiences, all kind of converging, and my autistic experiences and interests all kind of just smashing together, and me being like, oh, this thing that I love to do, I need to incorporate like more horror into it. And you know what? As I'm recalling things, this is interesting. I described visually all of the early elements of my persona that don't really tie in with horror, but from the get-go, my first number was horror
Ah!
inspired. I mean, the first number that I ever did was at a drag fundraiser competition at my alma mater, Kent State.
Mm-hmm.
And the number that I did, like, yes, I was dressed, I was like an alien prince, and I was like a Rococo inspired alien prince. And I was wearing my powdered wig from Amazon, and I had on my little pantaloons and my shiny, silver shoes that I spray painted. And I had that thing, and I had my cardboard cutout spaceship that had little trance symbols on it. That was my
Mm-hmm.
aesthetic. But then my number, I ended up having a severed head that I was eating brains out of. So
Good.
I don't know. I guess I just realized, yeah, no, horror has been a part of my drag from the get-go, but aesthetically I feel like that was not my initial idea of the aesthetics. But I feel like now the persona that I have, visually speaking, speaks a lot more to a horror aesthetic.
I really love that through line, especially when you were originally talking about, even in the more explicitly visually Rococo inspired drag persona, the idea is to reclaim something, to pervert something in your word. And I think that that's a really suitable word here for your own purposes. And then becoming more conscious of it, more deliberately taking these horror aesthetics and these horror tropes, which, and I'm sure we'll get into this more later, but a lot of the times the cisgender authors of horror want to utilize it against trans people and trans experiences. So I think that horror as something fundamental to Marquis Gaylord as a trans artist, as a black trans artist, is really effective and powerful. I really appreciate that. Taking that thesis, I want us to focus on the song itself.
Mhm.
Transvestites Can Be Cannibals too. So, what in the lyrics or concept of this song spoke to you as a trans drag artist working in horror?
So first, I mean, before I love to go off a little bit. Before I even get into answering that, can I talk about Harley Poe? Like, can I
Yes,
talk about
please.
my like interest in this artist? I, this is one of the artists that I never realized, and like a genre, folk punk as a genre, I didn't realize I was exposed to a lot younger than I was conscious to back in the day when
Mm.
I had an iPod. You better work iPod. I ended up on iTunes downloading. There was I guess, a cover, you could say, of the Hearse song by
Mm-hmm.
Harley Poe. And I had that
Yes.
on my iPod, and I liked the song a lot, and I hadn't really any other familiarity with that artist or the band. And also for a long time, I thought Harley Poe was a woman. I thought it was like the woman on the cover. Harley Poe is in fact a band, and it is led by
Yes.
I'm gonna say man question mark. I don't know. I think that his gender might be a little something different, but I do believe that it is fronted by a queer person,
Mm-hmm.
this band. But and I think Transvestites Will Be Cannibals too was the second song by Harley Poe I ever heard. So it
Yeah.
was interesting to me because I saw, I was like, oh, I'm familiar with this artist. They did the Her song. And then I listened, and then I, discovered this song that's much different than this, little folksy cover of the Her song. And what spoke to me, I mean, the first line of the song, and you didn't have me have, I have the words memorized, of course, but I do have the lyrics pulled
Mm-hmm.
up here as you asked me to. But the
Thank
first
you.
line of the song, as all folk punk songs do, an instrumental intro
Mm-hmm.
to the song, and then and again, it's like it's folksy. Here's the harmonica, and then the first words you hear in this song, in this like strung out, like high, like kind of pained, intense voice is, "I hate the way that I look in my own clothes," you
Yeah.
know? And I feel like, as just when I think about like my trans experience, and I think about that very just sudden sort of visceral thing, I hear this and I'm like, yeah, that's me. It's like in those early pained, just dysphoria debilitating days of me coming into like my transsexual identity and realizing, who I am and what I'm going through. It's like you look at yourself in the mirror, and yeah, I do hate the way that I look in my own clothes, and I hate the way
Hmm.
that I look in my own skin, and I hate this being that I see right now. And that is such a just that's just a staunchly painful thing that I feel
Yeah.
like people who aren't trans don't understand that.
Right.
I mean, we all have, insecurities, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. But it's the very deep, just visceral sort of feelings of just not literally being able to recognize yourself that I feel like, for me in my trans experience, that is something which is why trans suicide rates are so high, you know?
Yeah.
It's just a lot. So, yeah, just from that first line of the song, immediately for me, I hear this song. I said, "Oh, this is a trans song." This
Mm-hmm.
song is about, if anything, even if it's like, you get a piece of art and you can say it's about one thing or whatever. Like, is this song about transness? Probably not, whatever, who's to say, but I hear this song. This song is about my transness. This song is about my transness to me. And I just felt like such a strong connection just from that first point. I've been rambling, but yeah.
No, first of all, this is a platform for you to ramble. Like I want to hear what you have to say about this music, about your performance, about your art because that's why we're here. So definitely never feel like you have to apologize for rambling. If anything, I am happy when I can ask you a question that gets you going for a while. So do not worry. I really appreciate you pointing that out. It is literally in the first line, the very first line is centering an experience that I think a lot of trans people can connect to. The first time that I remember hearing this song, I actually heard it live, kind of by accident. Harley Poe was opening for Will Wood a couple of years ago,
Oh, word.
and I remember like the first lyrics that I latched onto were in the chorus, getting into the part about wearing my sister's clothes, painting my nails, all of that, and that still locked in for me. Like, oh, this is a trans song. I don't know exactly what angle it's coming at it from, but this is a trans song. I can't hear it really well in this bar, but I'm gonna go home and listen to it and figure out what's going on here. And that's why I really enjoy seeing your interpretation of the song. I like kind of lost my mind in the crowd the first time I saw you do it because I'm like, yes, I really wanted to see a trans person do this song and do it justice because it's all right there. All of it's not even subtext at this point, it is the text.
Like, it is interesting though, because I feel like there it's looking at this song, a song that is called Transvestites Can Be Cannibals Too. I feel like a lot more, I would say, conservatively minded trans people would see something like that and be like, this is an insult. This
Mm,
is, Harley Poet is a horror band. This is a, transphobic horror trope. This is, and I feel like there are definitely some trans people who could see a song like that and because like you said earlier about horror, unfortunately some horror authors, movie directors, creators, etc., using transness as as the monster. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Using, at the end of Sleepaway Camp, oh, the murderer was trans. This was a man pretending to be a woman and killing these people. Like that. Unfortunately, has been like a very common trope, feeding into the trans panic idea of trans people being out to get cis people, being deceptive, and to that nature. But just from the words, again, just from the words of like, oh, this song is transvestites can be cannibals too, but like for me, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like there is something in a sense that is kind of something, horror band, there's something dark about it, but there's something in my mind, something sort of tongue in cheek and sarcastic about it, and something that is sort of rebellious about the idea of, like trans people to being, something to be like legitimately afraid of. Like if we get into what do you call the little bit before the chorus?
A pre-chorus.
A pre-chorus.
Yep.
Well, yes. All right. So in this pre-chorus, it's, transvestites can be cannibals too. I'll feel better after I eat you. I hate people when they're not polite. If you end up on my table, it serves you right. So
Mm-hmm.
that is also one of my favorite. That's like one of my favorite parts of the song, really, because I feel like it then becomes this, like the idea behind, again, like the concept of like trans panic is, for anybody who's
Mm-hmm.
not familiar, the legal term trans panic, gay panic is the idea that somebody can like legally kill you because they didn't know you were trans and they found out and they were so shocked and so mentally upset by it that they killed
Mm-hmm.
you, and it's your fault. It's your fault for being murdered for being trans because you were trans. And that's the
Right.
same for like gay panic, the same idea for that. So when we have this song about, transvestites can be cannibals too, and like the subversion of I hate people when they're not polite. If I end up eating you, it's your fault. You deserved it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You brought it upon yourself. You were asking for it. And I feel like there's something so powerful in that subversion of if I end up cannibalizing you, because you were transphobic and evil and crappy to me, then that's on you. And I just, it just feels like such a reclamation for me. Because sometimes I'm just like, yeah, what if I just unhinged my jaw like a snake and just bit your head off? Like,
Correct. Yes. I love that. And that is something that really honestly does speak to me about this song because even though maybe the title and the chorus are not using the exact vocabulary that most trans people will use for themselves, it is situating themselves in the history of gender transgression in horror. You mentioned Sleepaway Camp. When I think about cross-dressing serial killers, I think about Silence of the Lambs, I think about
Buffalo
Psycho.
Bill. Yeah,
Yeah,
Buffalo Bill.
yeah, so when we have this, one distinction that I think is really key is that in all of the media that we're referencing, the transvestite in question is an object of spectacle.
Hmm.
But this is a song that is from inside the perspective of the character that has been vilified so much from the outside. It's already going to be subversive because it's a more sympathetic look at this character because we
Hmm.
have an I instead of.
Instead of the it. Honestly, it's a I instead of the it. Because I feel like, trans people literally being made into this creature, the big, scary, the menace that
Mhm.
is, coming for you and your family. It's especially, with all of the very recent anti-trans, and specifically anti-trans legislator
Mhm.
and just propaganda truly that is like going on. I feel like that it really is hitting home even harder for me personally these days.
And also in light of the things you said about trans panic, that is what I get from you doing this song when I'm watching you do it. It's you're taking this story that has been applied to trans people against their will and in a really there's always kind of this double-edged sword of transphobia where it's like on the one hand trans people are a menace who are here to destroy the fabric of society, and also trans people are so weak and so pathetic and such a minority where like there's people have written essays and theses about this where you're portrayed as both a threat and insignificant.
Like you're exactly like you're David and Goliath. Like how are we both? Like we're this big bad, we're this, person who can barely defend themselves. It's like how are we everything? It's this entire sort of, just hodgepodge of belief, and it feels like they're just trying to take any angle that they can to dismantle trans people as an entity. It's not working.
Mm-hmm.
It's honestly just pissing us off.
Right. It's not working. It's not going to work. But in the face of that, I do really love what you're doing with it, where you're responding to this narrative, not by saying, well, no, that's not true. We're not like that. Instead, you're saying, no, I am exactly as fucking dangerous as you're saying I am, and watch out, I might eat you. I think that's awesome.
This song, it creates a narrative. You know, it is the I. Like, I'm this character in this song as I'm performing it. I think the song, like, and when I do perform this song, well, the first time I performed this song, and mind you, this is a song I wanted to perform like as soon as I ever heard it. And so to be able to finally perform it, I was very, very grateful for that opportunity. But the first time I ever performed this song was at my show, Manor of the Macabre. It was
Yes.
at my birthday show that I titled Grindhouse. And when I performed this song, I had my very good friend Inferno Joe be my victim. For context, Inferno Joe is like this like 6'2" white man who looks like he should be like an 80s wrestler. But he's like the sweetest golden retriever puppy dog of a human being you're ever gonna meet in your life. He's also
Yes.
like the biggest masochist I know. He loves for
Mm-hmm.
people to beat him up. And so I was like, Inferno Joe, will you please be my victim for this number? He said, but of course. I love him so much. So for the number, I have him on stage in a chair, tied up to this chair. And as I was performing this number the first time, it was sort of, villain monologue-y. You have
Yes.
your victim tied up, and, I'm like on the stage, like I'm talking to the audience, and I'm talking to my victim. I have, my little butcher's knife prop. I'm dressed up in the outfit I wore for it. I have a latex hood. I wore
Yes.
an apron I had made out of burlap that was, like covered in blood, and I put the trans symbol on it in blood. It's just the apron, and just I had organs, wrapped on me. It's very cool. But he's tied up, and one of the lines in the song is, "So you don't like being tied up? Well, I don't like being me." You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's just such for me such this like powerful, again, with the subversion of what we're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
is, it's like, again, there's the reversal of, you don't like me being, you don't like me being the way that I am. I don't like you being the way that you are, and what you are vilifying me. And it's like, well, if you didn't want to be tied up, about to be chopped up and eaten by me, then you shouldn't have done it. So, and at that point, that is, the core, into the chorus and into it again. It's like because I'm rude, I'm ugly, I'm everything you hate. I'm here tonight to put you on my plate. And as, the song is, kind of reaching that swell, that is when I, start taking my butcher's knife and I'm just hacking him up and I'm pulling organs out of him. And I end up rolling on top of him and I'm like pulling out these organs and I'm chewing on these organs. It's, just campy B horror movie guts and violence.
Good. I love that. Politicizing cannibalism, but in the other direction. That that's perfect. Thank you. I'm so glad that you brought up you doing this at Manor of the Macabre because I know you also did it again at an auditorium a while ago that I didn't get to see, right?
Yes.
So, when you did it for Auditorium, did you change anything in the staging or the
I
props of it?
did.
Yes,
I
please
did.
tell me the
I
remix.
I did it so differently. Oh my gosh. So when I did it at the auditorium, the theme for that month, bleh. I'm gonna take a sip of water. I'm gonna restart the whole
And I'm
sentence.
gonna take another cough drop so we are on the same page. It's a little T-boy voice break. We've got it.
Nothing like T-boy vocal fry. You ever get that T-boy vocal fry?
Yeah, no, like I'm not even auntie and just like the register I try to talk in gets me that. And it's like, no,
It'll
stop
do
it.
it. That'll do it.
All right.
But what was I going to say? Yes, so at the auditorium, The theme that month was Carnival of the Tranimals, and I just
Hmm.
wanted filthy transsexual drag that I love. The first number I did that day was I did I Don't Want to Be Me, typo negative, which of all when you asked me what numbers to talk about, that would have been my second choice for numbers to talk about
Mm-hmm.
because that's the number I do my T shot, which is very
Yes.
slay. For the finale number, I wanted to do transvestites or cannibals too, and I totally rethought how I did it. So, like I said, that long opening, the opening begins, and Dunlap's is where it used to be at Auditorium. They have the curtains into to get onto the stage and like
Mm-hmm.
into the room. And I come out. I'm in a slightly different outfit. I'm in a revamping of my organ look. I just again body horror and transness to me just go hand in hand. So I have been continuously revamping this like blood organ look that I've created.
Mm-hmm.
So this, when I performed it there, this is like a second iteration of it. It is just me in this kind of a harness of like intestines. And it is
Nice.
me. I made a little kind of a little intestinal thong as well. That was there. So just intestines bloody. And then I made, are you familiar with those dental spreaders?
Yes.
They're like a
Yes.
plastic dental spreader. I bought a big old pack of those, and I ended up decorating it so that there were needles coming out of the mouth part, and then draped down it. I took my old testosterone bottles, and I used fishing wire to kind of like to hang them so they would like clink and clatter and move, and then everything was just doused in blood.
That's awesome.
So that was that, and I had like color contacts I was wearing, so my eyes looked really creepy. I had the dental spreader in. One of my good friends, Rosie Quartz, she saw me and she's like, "Marquis, you look so disgusting right now. I can't even look at you. It's making me sick to my stomach." I said, "Ah, thank you."
That's
That
the goal.
that made me so happy. Like, listen, whenever somebody tells me that something I do is so revolting, like they can't look, I'm like, that makes me so happy. So the look was a lot more extreme for this
Mm-hmm.
second iteration. And I come out. I have to say the shoe. I repainted the same. These shoes have had a million lives. The shoes that were originally my prom shoes, which were then silver shoes I wore the first time I did drag, then became these bloody kind of a nude pump that I painted those shoes again to match the blood and the viscera of my outfit. So those are good shoes that have had many lives.
Thank you for mentioning the shoe. That was important.
Yes, I love a good shoe. Listen. Okay, we have to pause. Quick pause. Important drag king advice moment for any drag kings listening. Drag kings, don't forget about the shoe. You have to have a good shoe. Make sure you have a cunty shoe. Don't just wear your Converse or your Doc Martens. Put some glitter on it. Put a paint job on it. Get some texture on it.
Mm-hmm.
Do something to it. Do something to it. Drag kings can have a good cunty shoe too. Okay? Amen. Amen?
Amen.
Yes, indeed. Okay. So I come out, in this much more extreme of a look. I'm also showing a lot more of my body. I open chest binds when I, do drag. So in the originally when I did this look, I was wearing this apron that obscured most of my body.
Mm-hmm.
Doing this look again, these months later, quite a bit later, honestly, I am now with a lot less clothing. I'm a lot more bloody, and I come out and I'm holding a brown paper bag of groceries. And, as the intro of this song is coming in, I'm laying out a table. I take out the bag. I take out my trans bag. I take out a foam cooler and I put that down. And written on that cooler, it says, "Dead girl, do not eat." I take out, a plate and I'm setting this table as this number is going on, and I'm performing, I'm doing this thing, and as I end up setting the table, at the like the apex of the song, I open up this cooler and I am getting emotional, whatever. Because honestly, I don't know, my trans art makes me emotional, but I open up the cooler and I take out a picture of myself when I was like 3 years old,
Oh.
and it's I don't know. Trans people, we all have our different experiences talking about our past selves and who we were and what that transition means to me. But like, I look like I think about my trans experience and I do feel I was that little girl. You know what I mean? I look at that little girl and, specifically like prepubescent me. I do feel like once I hit the point of puberty, I feel like that really sent me in a direction gender-wise that just was not me. But I look back at like my like 3-year-old self that was so unburdened by all of the bullshit of society and gender, and I feel like I
Mm.
I just was. I call that being that's a little girl, but that's a little person. That was just a little me, you know what I mean? And sometimes, I have these really, emotional feelings about like did I kill my parents' daughter?
Oh,
Did I kill this person I once was? You know what I mean? That's something I struggled with for a while. I don't think I have religious trauma, but I do think there was a period in my life that I had spiritual turmoil, and the idea of did I kill my parents' daughter was this really emotional hurdle I kind of had to come to terms with. And, that sort of thing. So during this number, I take out this picture of me when I'm like 3 years old and dead girl do not eat. Who was I? Who am I now? What has my transition done for me? Because I do feel like there was a death of this
yeah.
person, you know but I also feel like that death was crucial. It had to happen for me to now be born from the. I was about to say born from the ashes, but that's such a nice way of putting it. Born from the viscera and the blood and the bone and the scraps of flesh from that person I once was. I do
Yeah.
feel like as a trans person, I had to claw my way out of a being that I once was into what I am now, and that was a bloody, bloody experience. So that's how I decided to redo the number. I made a lot. I got a little teary eyed describing it. I was told afterwards
Mm.
I made a lot of trans people cry. When I did that number, they came up to me afterwards. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Fuck you! You made me cry." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah."
Yeah. And I think that introspective version, because in the original staging that you told me about, I mean, obviously this entire number, lyrically and conceptually, is reflecting on your relationship with your body as a trans person. But I think in the version where you are, killing someone, killing Inferno Joe on stage is definitely the more external version of it. It is weaponizing it against an enemy, which is transphobia in transphobic institutions, and then having this more internal alternative narrative where you you did just open up about the question of is sorry, I'm a little emotional about it too, just hearing you talk about it, because I do also find myself thinking about the question of is this yeah, I don't think I can paraphrase it any better than you said it, which is just did I kill my parents' daughter? I think that that's something that so many transmasculine people wonder, and something that so many narratives about us leave out, because so many people talk about transness as like something almost retroactive, like, oh yeah, I'm a man now, I was born a man, I was always a man, and that's very neat.
hmm
That's very
I mean, it's
convenient.
the very born this way theory. It's the idea of like the immutability of transness as a right in order to try to instill our rights. The idea of we were born trans and we were always trans and that we knew young and we always knew whatever. But like for me, genuinely with my trans experience, I don't think that all of that really kicked in for me, like I said, until that pubescent point in
Mm-hmm.
which society starts to treat you different, your body is changing, and then it all kind of comes flooding in at once. Like I
Mm.
think about myself as a child, and I think about how, I was I was not to be like I was perfectly happy. I had some shit, but it's more
Mm-hmm.
like gender wise, that was things I didn't think about, and like in my fantasy lands, I could be a knight. I wanted to be a knight all the time. I wanted to be a pirate. I got to do those things. I'm very thankful that I was raised by parents who were totally fine with buying me the Barbies and, the Lego pirate set and letting me have a Nerf gun and I ran around with the neighborhood boys. Like I am grateful that I do feel like I had some semblance of a boyhood. I feel like
Yeah.
there are some trans people who unfortunately were raised in environments where it was like, no, you're not playing outside and doing this. No, you're not gonna get to have these things. No, you can't, play with the boys. You're gonna da 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 da, and not getting to have that sort of carefree era in your life of, a more masculinized childhood. But I feel like I'm really, grateful I was able to have that. So I feel like I really was in that gender fancy free land. I was just living my life. And then the next thing you know, it's you have a developing chest, put on an undergarment. What? What's happening? Oh, then also by the way, here are all these men who are going to start looking at you and trying to touch
Mm.
you. And now, you can't hang out with your guy friends anymore in the same way you used to. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, all of the societal shit that then shifts your perspective. And then the next thing you know, you're like, I'm transsexual, actually. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's important to portray trans narratives that aren't neat and pretty and that are violent and sometimes not only not shying away from the violence that has been done to us, but also the violence that for many of us is inherent to the way we think about our existence.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that that's a really necessary aspect of your performance art. It's come up a couple of times, and I didn't write it down, but I remember now that I've been wanting to talk about it. So this question requires a little bit of backstory. I remember it was last year. I was writing a bio for a drag show that I was in that was through my school, and in that bio, I described myself as transsexual, and I got a lot of questions from other trans people who were like, well, but why are you using that word? Is that a little outdated? Like, what do you mean by that politically? And like, I gave the best explanation that I could about what the political resonance of that word and that identity was for me. But I would really like to give you a minute to elaborate on what does it mean to you to call yourself, to call your community transsexual specifically? What power does that term hold for you?
First, give me one hot second. I gotta get some tissues. Ugh!
Absolutely, go
You
ahead.
didn't tell me I was gonna be crying on your podcast.
I'm sorry. You're I should have you're not the first. I should have said something. But
Yeah, Twisted's episode was very emotional.
mm,
I enjoyed listening to that one a lot. I've been really enjoying listening to these things. I'm excited for the next episode to come out.
thank you.
Ugh! Transsexual never cry. It's like who you saw that meme Queen never cry. Queen and never cry. And sexual never cry. Ugh. Come here, bovine. Come here, stingy. Ugh.
This is why we need a cat on every episode for emotional support.
Emotional support. That's why I adopted him. This is my
Mm-hmm.
ESA. I
Oh my
said,
god!
support me, please.
He's a working
Like,
animal. I
there's
didn't
nothing
know
I can
that.
do to help you, tranny. You're doomed. Doomed. All right, so why I choose to call myself transsexual versus transgender. It 100% is it's a political move. I'll say that like historically speaking, so many of our like for like our front running trans activists in the community have called themselves transsexual. So I feel like following in their footsteps, that's one of the
Mm.
reasons I choose to call myself transsexual, is to honor the memory of the people who came before us, who fought for our right to exist as we are. For me, I also like to call myself transsexual, honestly, because it pisses people off. I think it
Yeah.
is a good way of sorting through different sorts of people. Because you're right, it will also piss off a certain type of, trans person who, again, might be more conservatively minded in terms of like what it means to be an unapologetic trans person. Because for me, the idea that sex is immutable just doesn't necessarily seem true. Because it's like, in my mind, because I am somebody who is on HRT, because I am on hormones, my body is no longer a cisgender body. I am something
Yeah.
else. I am something different. I've moved between the sexes.
Mm-hmm.
Like you know what I mean? And that's how I feel it. I mean, transphobes always have the argument of your skeleton will always be female and your chromosomes. I'm over here like, first of all, you don't even know how to use a microscope. So I don't know why you're
Right.
talking to me like you're some next level biologist, okay? Second, I'm just like, not to, this sounds so stupid, but in my mind, I'm like, fuck you guys. I do what I want. I am
Mm-hmm.
transsexual. You can't stop me. That's really kind of my idea behind it.
Mm-hmm.
If I say that I am now a male, fuck you, I am. Just like if they're over here like, well, my idea of God says that you are the worst and you're gonna go to hell. I'm like, cool. My idea of myself says I'm the shit and God loves me and I'm cool and hot and sexy and also I have a big dick and I'm a guy. So the fuck, if we can just say whatever is real, let's just say whatever's real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. I'm obviously not a biologist, and I feel like I'm like not mincing my words, but I feel like I'm not making the classy, intelligent argument that one would expect a trans scholar to make about the political idea of why you should blah blah blah. But I just don't feel like that right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm crying about drag and I'm a trans person and I'm tired. I'm
Yeah.
transsexual and I want to be. And I feel like that should be enough, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I I do. This is not the platform for the classy and edited and perfect argument. This is the platform for us to say what we're thinking and say what we want. And I agree, and I think that you're right, and I think that you should say it more and louder and wherever you want to say it. Thank
You're
you.
so great, Caius.
Thank you.
Period. Yeah, so that's me. I feel like I call myself transsexual so I can find other transsexuals.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also do feel like I don't know, all the transsexuals I meet, we're vibing on a different lane, on a different wavelength. And I feel like it's just something we can like relate to each other about that experience. I do. I think there's just something very bold and unapologetic about, declaring yourself a transsexual loud and proud and from the rooftops because, that's what they don't want you to do. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it kind of just packs that punch that I like.
It has teeth to it, is what I always like to say. And it's something I think in part because, like, allies are afraid to say it. It's part of why I want to say it. Like, yeah, no, I want this one. You can't have it. So, you recently celebrated the return of Odditorium, now at no class in March. I am so glad that it's back. I can't wait to see it again. Unfortunately, because of grad school, I had to miss the first one, but I can't wait to see future ones. So, as an artist and a producer, I just want to take a minute on the air. What is your mission statement for Odditorium? What kind of space are you creating in drag with this show?
For the auditorium, my like what inspired me to create the auditorium was really just the fact that like in our scene in Northeast Ohio, there were no black produced alternative drag shows.
Mm.
They just weren't there. And when you see a space, sometimes you're just like, I gotta fill this space because when you have shows that are only produced by the same type of people, they usually only end up booking the same type of people. And thus the shows kind of entered this echo chamber of
Yeah.
just not letting other types of artists platform. And then that kind of inadvertently becomes an echo chamber of, just sort of the type of exclusionary sort of attitudes and thoughts about, different artists. Specifically, alternative artists, but also even more specifically, artists who are non-white, artists who are trans, artists who are just different. So I feel like that was, a big like factor of it. Just like let's have somebody else produce a
Hmm.
show. And I feel like ever since I have produced shows, my shows are different than the other shows that, have existed before and are starting to exist now. I feel like the auditorium is a space where people whose art can whose art that deviates from the what is whatever the norm, which what is the norm with drag, like why is there a norm with something that is so, you know is supposed to be so unique, underground, out of the box, that has become pretty commercialized
Hmm.
within, the years that have been coming on. But I feel like just having a space where you can do something that you honestly could maybe never do anywhere else. At like at the last auditorium, we had Comatose close the show by, turning themselves into an ice cream sundae on stage and making this like disgusting mess, And I did a number where I like shot out the American flag and vomited on it, like doing things that like, probably can't, take to your average Sunday brunch or, other venues that, might be, a little bit less punk rock and not want those things to happen, And of course, we got our acts approved by, Emma, the owner of the venue, who is amazing. So, even just having a venue owner who allows for us to do really gross, weird, crazy shit like that is, rare, and it's amazing to have us just a venue that will allow you to do those things and create gross, weird, messy art. Like last summer when they had an outdoor show, Mommy Milkers, Mullets and Mommy Milkers, I ended up doing a number where I made a crop top that said back the dew, and then I ended up, like pouring Mountain Dew all over myself to, kickstart my heart. Like,
Hmm. Hmm. I remember there was definitely a splash zone for that number. Like everyone who was sitting in like the front row also got a little bit of at least like mist of Mountain Dew on them. And honestly,
let's
that's
say not
great.
Sierra
That's
Mist,
why we need
Mountain
patio
Dew.
shows. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to have the auditorium back. I honestly, do you do you want a little do you want a little treat, a little hint as to something that is coming up in July?
I do. I do. Tell me.
In July, it is going to be the biggest, filthiest, most transsexual auditorium to date. The date of it is July 18th. It is at
Okay.
no class. And it is all I gotta say is it's gonna be nuts. It's gonna be so nuts. You don't even understand. I'm so excited about it. July's auditorium, sickening crazy. But what else is gonna be sickening crazy is May's auditorium, which is gonna
Mm-hmm.
be on May 15th. And the theme is the Weird, Weird West.
Oh. Oh, that's gonna be insane.
It's gonna be
Nice.
very fun. I'm excited because I'm like, who doesn't love, weird, queer, Western spookiness? I think it'll be a fun time.
I agree. I am so excited for that and wonderful, wonderful timing because my grad school semester ends the week before, so I can actually go to that one. I can actually enjoy that one.
Hell yeah. I think you're gonna have a good time. Period. Can't wait to see you there.
Epic.
I think I'd also like to say a little bit about how the week of Auditorium re-premiered. That was also the week of my 3-year drag anniversary.
Yes, tell me about your 3-year drag anniversary.
It's honestly insane that I've been doing this for 3 years because it doesn't feel like it's been 3 years. But it's like in that time, I'm so unspeakably grateful about the
Mm.
community that I have built, about the friendships that I formed that have just like become my family. Like, truly, I would be nothing without this community. Like, this
Mm.
community is my lifeblood. I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful for people like you who are keeping our stories alive for posterity and getting things recorded. I'm really grateful for just all of like the new artists who are up and coming, who are interested and getting involved and are, just growing the scene and honestly just making Cleveland into, I think that we are really like quite comparable to cities like Chicago and like New York in terms of like the caliber and the diversity of our drag.
Mm.
Like Cleveland as a city, I believe is a kind of an underground drag capital of the
Yeah.
Midwest. And I'm just really excited to see how we continue to grow because we're awesome. I love us.
Well, we are so lucky to have you. You are doing so much to shape this scene. I really appreciate seeing all the work you do and the spaces that you are creating. So, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for talking to me. It's been a pleasure recording with you.
Period.
Thank you for listening to Kings on the Aux. This episode featured Cleveland drag king Marquis Gaylord and was hosted by Cleveland drag king Caius Crow. You can find Marquis' looks, performance videos, and upcoming show dates on Instagram at the Marquis Gaylord. That's THE.MARQUIS.GAYLORD. You can find me on Instagram at Caius Crow. That's CAIUS Crow. Questions? Comments? Compliments? Complaints? Send me a message on Instagram or email me at caiuscrow@gmail.com. I'll talk to you soon on our next episode. Thank you for supporting local drag.